Telepathic civilizations have always existed. Throughout the universe, telepathic civilizations exist in the future as well as in the past. The future and past are unified in the present, owing to the radial nature of time. This radial nature of time is the fourth dimensional level of the synchronic order organized by telepathic forms. It is in this vast realm that we also re-encounter the Wizard's Garden, the realm of the elementals and mythic creatures. The regeneration of the time-space is the regeneration of the planetary elementals. As the new time-space emerges, a shift in the energy patterns takes place. Our evolved space brothers and sisters are calling on us to return to the wonder of nature, to be aware of the power of nature and the cosmos. This is where they live. They can only manifest themselves to those attuned to nature. Members of other planets have always visited our planet from time to time, or they have listened to our planet with their telepathic stethoscope to survey our species. Why? Because Earth is a planet with noosphere, and a planet with noosphere is the prerequisite for becoming a telepathic civilization. The return of telepathic civilization can only come about once a complete harmonic pacification and stabilization has occurred on planet Earth between the mind and the diversity of life forms. Once this has occurred, then comes a symbiotic activation of the various species inhabiting the Earth in relation to each other and to the cosmos. At this time, the intermediate utopic stage of telepathic civilization is intuited by some. The more advanced minds of the planet are already receiving the higher registrations of different mental layers that compose the mind of the cosmos. Once the pacification is complete and utopia or syntropia is established, then comes the harmonic return of telepathic civilization. Return refers to a telepathic civilization universally dispersed throughout the cosmos, returning to one form of its past. In other words, the time-space is universal and encompasses what we think of as past time, as well as future time. Something becomes at the same moment that it returns. The reason for the universality of telepathic time-space is accounted for in the formulation of Russian scientist Kozyrev, who stated the velocity of time is instantaneously infinite. This also refers to the velocity of telepathy. In this regard, time and telepathy are inseparable and faster than the speed of light. This means that for whatever generating point in the mind throughout the universe, the telepathic wave radiates in all directions, both to what we think of as space and what we think of as time. There is also a reception of telepathic time waves from every point of past, present, and future. This is always available. That is why we speak of mental layers. All thoughts or mental constructs that have ever occurred or will occur are equally dispersed throughout the universe, creating layers of thought waves. The mental layers can be thought of as stockpiles of telepathic mind waves generated from different points in space. These mind waves have a common resonant frequency and so pack themselves into different mental layers. As the mind is able to rise above the pettiness of the lower self into the higher dimensions, then the consciousness or awareness opens to various mental layers. The mental layers are experienced differently according to the disposition of the being operating behind the awareness. Knowledge is given according to levels of consciousness. Whatever knowledge is needed is always communicated at those specific levels. Telepathic civilization is but one mental layer that we can open to. Since cosmic evolution is infinite, telepathic civilization is not necessarily thought of as a stable phenomenon, but rather a dynamically dispersed phenomenon in which new planets, life forms, and new forms of existence are continuously occurring. Telepathic civilization takes part in the activation of the evolutive process of the planets and new life forms of existence as they emerge. Telepathy forms the primary informative infrastructure underlying and connecting all phenomena in the universe. It is at the parton and subatomic levels that the atomic molecular cellular level is unified with itself, as it is dispersed throughout the entire universe. All the hydrogen atoms unify with other hydrogen atoms throughout the universe, as they are in a common telepathic frequency. In this regard, telepathy is a resonant informative pattern that bonds together all the elements holding that frequency. Oxygen atoms that combine to form liquid called water are unified throughout the whole universe. There are hydrogen and oxygen molecules, H2O, that create a common resonance that keeps water at a specific consistency. Wherever we go, water is water. It has a particular consistency due to the telepathic infrastructure that bonds all the molecular structures that underlie whatever phenomena or element. Above this we go to the more refined or subtle levels of the six-dimensional etheric structures. The same rules apply here. All the elements that make the structures exist, those electronic and hyper-electronic levels, are held together as a common telepathic resonance. The return of telepathic civilization refers to patterns of telepathic return that are engaged on a particular evolutionary course or path and set in motion. There are points in this continuum that cyclically transfer the telepathic thought waves already set in motion by higher levels of telepathic civilization. These thought waves then become engaged in planetary thought forms of that particular stage. For example, the year 2013 represents an already existing preordained moment of telepathic civilization. This is why the planetary event horizon up to 2012 becomes a phenomenal quickening, so that all the karma can be disposed of, cleansed, and purified. The noosphere simultaneously lifts off, triggering the predetermined telepathic civilization and intervention. The mental states and consciousness are then adjusted and modified to accord with the higher resonance and frequency that we think of as the next stage of evolution. What does this next stage of evolution look or feel like? We are talking about different primary geometrical form patterns and structures of an etheric nature that are coded with different mathematical formulas. These telepathic grammatical structures enter into the collective mental field or noosphere, imprinting it with new mental programs to replace old programs that are rapidly dissolving. We can visualize these new programs as millions of cubic structures in the noosphere simultaneously, containing or being contained by one master cube of 21. The higher civilization considers the capacity of the next stage of evolution as one that can contain and embody a fractal cubic structure of 21, which is a 9261 unit, 21 times 21 times 21 structure. All of its permutations and structures key into the higher structures, including cubes of any and all of its members. For instance, an even vaster supercube of 252, a factor of 16,003,008, or 144 cubed times 441 cubed. Also note that the God particle is 288 squared, 82,944, factored by 2,808, 13 times 216, the velocity of energy of the mass of the God particle. Of course, we can reduce these to smaller factors. This is an example of the basic mental form language of the next stage of evolution that we are going into. Right now, it might seem really far out and heady mathematics, but the codes are being prepared, so when the telepathic intervention occurs in 2013, these structures will be loaded into the noosphere. If we add the cubes 1 to 21, we follow a larger rhythmic structure. 1 cubed is 1, 2 cubed is 8, 3 cubed is 27, 4 cubed is 64, 5 cubed is 125, 6 cubed is 216, 7 cubed is 343, 8 cubed is 512, 9 cubed is 729, up to 21, which is 9,261. When we add the numbers of the cubes, they create another number, which is 53,361, which turns out to be 231 squared. 231 is 21 times 11, which are key factors in the matrix of the cube of 21. We can go on ad infinitum. Until recently, there were thousands of different languages that human beings spoke. Some have now gone extinct due to assimilation or extinction. But the question is, how did this all come about? Where did the Jews learn Hebrew? Where did the Arabs learn Arabic? Where did the Aztecs learn Nahuatl? Where did the Chinese learn Chinese? Think of all the different intricacies of these linguistic structures. For example, hundreds of different languages exist just among Australian Aborigines alone. Where did they come from? Consider that the programs of those languages were loaded by previous telepathic civilization interventions that impacted the unconscious noosphere. Then each of the tribes was able to download its particular language according to its psychogeographical location. Numerous languages have evolved from a set number of root languages, and some even now existing are primary root languages. There are still a large number of languages accorded with different psychogeographical regions on Earth. It was some 40 to 60,000 years ago that the downloading of language occurred. As the Homo sapiens evolved from the Neanderthal type from 78 to 26,000 years ago, then the different languages were loaded into the noosphere. The final ones came in from 26,000 down to around 3000 BC. Each group received from wherever they were tuned in. In other words, the unconscious noosphere contained language structures that were loaded according to a larger psychic engineering program into the brain capacitors or mental spheres of the different groups, and thus they evolved their different traditions and ways. Given the intricacies of language and language structure, there is no way that anyone could figure out all of the logics for a language. Past tenses, future tenses, subjunctive, imperative, not to mention syntax and congruencies of nomenclature. This was already loaded into the human mind with a particular intrinsic systematically logical purpose. When we travel to the pre-technological past, we examine the fields of knowledge that were considered mandatory studies. We find the main subjects were mathematics, astronomy, grammar, logic, and music. These were the main subjects taught by Greek philosophers, Indian pandits, and early schools in Islamic Arabia. These were the main subjects, and are all related to underlying logical mathematical structures. The original philosophy was a philosophy of number. Just as the different language programs and their intrinsic structures were downloaded into the noosphere, likewise, in the noospheric stage, the Psychozoic era, the next intervention will download into the now conscious noosphere. This download can be thought of as different form structures of the telepathic time-space cube of cosmic universal mind. All the forms will be downloaded into the noosphere, and we will learn telepathically that the grammar of telepathy is a pre-coded order of number, just as the grammar of language is the order of words. How is it that when we speak or write, all these words come out in a particular order with a particular meaning that communicates to someone? How can this be? How can it be that we can communicate words in a spontaneous, unrehearsed moment? This is because the mind is in resonance with the higher mind or noosphere. In most cases, most people are just parrots. They speak in clichés and in a set of hardly more than 100 learned structures of grammar and sentences. It is no different if we listen to the human beings or the twittering of birds. which is why the latest cyberspheric technology is called Twitter. We are examining the downloading of a higher form language. With a telepathic civilization, the downloading occurs in the form of a particular mathematical language. This knowledge can be gleaned by mathematicians in the past, though many did not realize that they were actually engaged in a whole telepathic mathematical realm or dimension of mind. Where does number exist in nature? Though number is the organizational power of all that is, for us it only exists in the mind. The mind is already generated in a mathematical process. This is why we get so excited when we discover specific qualities of specific sets of number. Or people get excited when they see time prompts like 1111. The excitement comes from the telepathic jolt we get from actually tuning into a larger telepathic infrastructure. When we get to this point of the telepathic beginning of civilization, we will see and understand where language and grammar come from, and also where number and mathematics come from. We will see that they can be traced back to particular mental layers that have filtered through the noospheric unconscious into the noospheric conscious. The difference between the noospheric conscious and the noospheric unconscious lies in the fact that telepathy means unobstructedness of mental unification. This is the meaning of conscious noosphere. In the unconscious noosphere, there is a density of egoic obstruction, and therefore there is disunity that breeds diverse karmic situations that have to play out. Once we cross the threshold of 2013, the growing process of unobstructed mental unification becomes universalized. As we open to this, we open to the higher forms of number language. These higher forms are the main means of communication in the telepathic civilization. In telepathic civilization, the instinctual harmonics of the sense ratios that prevailed in prehistoric or aboriginal man are translated into mathematical ratios that govern all psychic phenomena and create the time-space of telepathic civilization. We are emerging from the unconscious, instinctual harmonics of the sense ratios into conscious experience of mathematical ratios that are supersensory and hyper-organic. We know many examples of the telepathic prowess of Aboriginal indigenous people. They can sense something is going to happen, or sense something happening at a distance to someone, or they can move very rapidly and suddenly jump very high. This is because they are operating in an unconscious resonance with instinctive mathematical ratios that govern their sense experiences. So there is no obstruction between mind, sense, and capacity to act. Sometimes a particular ratio will impact the mind and instinctively engage it in a supermental response or behavior mechanism. This is a key point. The investigation of the meaning of number from this perspective is called numerology. Though discredited by materialist sciences, numerology is the sum of various efforts at defining or describing a telepathic form language. As we enter deeper into telepathic civilization, we will learn how those mathematic ratios are that govern the psychic and interpsychic sense experiences. This is part of the learning that comes through the adaptation to the holomind perceiver, the seventh mental sphere to be activated within the noosphere. The holomind perceiver is a function of mathematical ratios. These mathematical ratios are embedded in the noosphere. As we learn these ratios, they affect latent capacities in our brain, awakening dormant capabilities that correspond to structures in the mathematical ratios of the larger matrix now being embedded into the noosphere. In telepathic civilization, communication is transmitted through resonance or knowledge by attunement. As it says in the Tibetan tradition, once yogis reach a certain level of consciousness, nature is all the books they need. We see now books, for the most part, sacred text excluded, are secondary experiences about what someone else experienced or that someone else is telling us about. Books of the future will be important, but the nature of books will change dramatically with focus on nature and magic mantric formulas or telepathic mathematic formulations rather than descriptions about something. The bottom line is that in telepathic civilization, knowledge is learned primarily through forms of resonant attunement. At this stage, all elements of consciousness will be in universal attunement, dissolving obscurations such as fear or mistrust that govern historical material civilization. In the state of complete trust, each person will be as transparent crystals, communicating without fear and having their needs met in a harmonious way. There is no government in telepathic civilization. Instead, there is all-pervading attunement to higher dimensional frequencies that establish self-organizing, self-regulating councils. In other words, people will know they are in resonance and that they have a particular aim that they are going toward, and everyone will know which council or group they are working with to accomplish a particular end. When something is needed, people naturally come together, and when a project is complete, they disperse. This is just some idea of how this process works. Utopia implies a sense of perfection. Utopias were invented because the mind knew things could be more perfect. Even in the myth of progress, machines could always get more perfect, but the self-sabotaging nature of the humans is such that no matter how hard we try to make it perfect, it always becomes even more imperfect. So at the end stage it is almost impossible to perceive clearly. All our ways and methods become even more imperfect until we reach the final closeout of the 1260 civilization. In the 1320 frequency, everything is in perfect time. That is, everything happens right on time. As people live more and more by synchronicity, they realize that everything is perfect. In that understanding, where everything happens for a reason, we realize we are part of a larger plan. The more we trust this larger plan, the more perfect we become. This is the process of syntropy. We are always getting better. Our way of life becomes ever more dynamic and harmonic, leading us to increasing levels of perfection and entering us into new gradations of spiritual mental evolution. This is the mechanism of cosmic evolution, a dynamic syntropic harmony. In the unobstructed unification of mind, which is the nature of telepathic civilization, the One is recognized as the All, and the All is recognized as the One. This does not mean that there are not many different types of beings, but at our core we are one. In telepathic civilization, each being is aware of its capacity to engage the mental layers and levels of thought, perception, and feelings that are available to all beings. At this level, we gain access to different stages of consciousness that distinguish every type of being that exists. In other words, there is a microcosm and macrocosm to each being that is holographically consistent for all beings. One being is all beings. The evolution of the human from the aboriginal stage of the unconscious noosphere, embedded in the symbolic structures that contain components of the future, then enters into the future being, the being of telepathic tomorrow. This is the unification of one being as all beings. This is also the meaning of psychic compression, the chief quality of the future time-space. These are visions to reflect on in considering the coming time-space. The being of tomorrow is so because he or she has absorbed and incorporated the structures and mathematical language into the function of his or her total being, physical, etheric, mental, emotional, psychic, etc. This mathematical language is integrated into an operating structure that extends the being into the universe, while simultaneously maintaining the form that is projected by the physical structure. Telepathic civilization has always existed. This is why there have always been visitations from other worlds. Telepathic civilization occupies a multidimensional thought space, which we call universe or cosmos. By superior mathematical constructs of mind, telepathic entities traverse different dimensions due to the common factor of resonance of form constants that are scattered through the different dimensions. Superior mathematical constructs of mind may take on similar form configurations through different dimensions in which the telepathic thought construct might be directed. In telepathic civilization, new superior mathematical thought form constructs through different interdimensional episodes may appear at specific time event horizons in third-dimensional reality. What is passed to the third dimension may be a future present event in telepathic civilization. Telepathic contacts with civilization can also be viewed as interventions that modify mental constructs within the collective unconscious of the planet, the noosphere. These interventions can come from any past, present, or future time event in telepathic civilization, which in the third dimension represents the spiritual power of a word returned to its source. The word originates from a pre-existing point within a light universe outside this universe. The word enters this universe as a resonance that may go through any number of dimensions until it reaches the physical, 28 to 42 dimensions down. Here it hits the noosphere, and according to the higher mind science that is generating the word, it multiplies itself into a great number of structures, which we call language. This word, that originated at a point outside the universe, goes through various form constructs before reaching the planetary noosphere. According to the need of group or tribe, the word manifests itself into different constructs that we call Spanish, Japanese, or Hebrew. These language structures are then channeled by elders of those particular tribes, so all children learn that particular language by the time they are 3 or 4 years old. By the time they are 7, most children will have learned the grammatical structures and all of the nuances associated with that particular language. This is due to a cosmically disposed capacity of mind that is engineered into the human from a higher dimension. There are many different ways of conceiving of the universal time-space of cosmic telepathic civilization. This particular one represents the imprint of a modular interdimensional transfer unit. What we see in this graphic is the archetypal structure of a 9-storied pyramid, beneath which is the sarcophagus of the tomb with the remnants of a particular entity, Pakalvotan, inside of it. The whole structure is embedded in a hyper-electrical field. Because of this modular harmonic archetypal configuration, the entity can use the surrounding resonant 4th, 5th dimensional electrical field and ascend through the vibrating structure of the 9-storied pyramid to a higher dimensional configuration of the same structure. The entity can then return to that point in the higher dimension and continue operating as a citizen of telepathic civilization, or return at will by the same means and methods. The form structure of the sarcophagus lid is actually the resonance of a higher dimensional archetypal construct. This provides a modular transference to different dimensions. This is an example of how what we call time travel is accomplished in the telepathic civilization. In the telepathic civilization, meditation is the principal mode of being. This is why there is such emphasis on Zen or Dzogchen practice, clearing the mind of the conditioned aspects and habitual tendencies of the civilization that is passing, arriving at a clear state where higher mind may assume control. The mind has been conditioned to think that if it is not thinking, then there is something wrong. We don't have to be compulsive or engage our thoughts or think we can solve anything by conceptualizing or thinking about it. In telepathic civilization it is understood, because of the unobstructed unification of mind, that we don't need to fill our mind with conceptual mental constructs of trying to figure things out. We just remain receptive and open, and whatever thought that arises is probably an accurate resonance of a particular path or mode of action or perception that needs to be followed through. This is also how we might experience transference of thought. Here there is a primal time-space meditation of a Kali Yuga archetype, and also a manifest projection of the meditation of the Kali Yuga archetype. The Kali Yuga archetype took form in a mind construct that was then projected into a third-dimensional entitization that can be visualized. Where did this image of Shiva come from, and who dreamed that up? These are projections of telepathic thought forms. In their original form, they are highly abstracted geometries, but appear modified in the third-dimensional time-space point to take on a particular appearance, like the meditating Shiva. This is the basis, the ground floor of telepathic civilization. Mathematicians may experience states of mind that are utterly clear, logical and focused, that they are transported into another world. This conforms to the popular image of mathematicians being ungrounded in reality. To enter into the mathematical world of number, there has to be some level of non-ego, whether they know it or not. However, most mathematicians don't have the spiritual sensibility to connect the world of number with mental spiritual evolution. In telepathic civilization, numbers are coordinates in a vast cosmic lattice of unification signals. The universe is meaningful, and certain numbers and combination of permutations spell out telepathic code languages that define the trajectory of spiritual mental evolution into the supermental field of creation. This is a definition of mathematics from the fourth dimension. Telepathy is the function of a self-existing frequency structure by which the universe remains in resonance with itself. In the mind of non-ego, we can tune into this telepathic frequency structure of the universal order. This is why it says of Milarepa, he was a mathematician attuned to the unchanging level of non-ego. This is because he was thoroughly telepathic, knowing all the inmost secrets and deepest recesses of the minds of others. This is 100% telepathic. Follow the logic. Highly developed telepaths must function at the level of non-ego all the time. Obviously, the nature of telepathic civilization is non-egoic. This is very different from the postmodern civilization. The seashell represents the structure of mathematics in nature, the logarithmic spiral and the golden mean as it is incorporated into the snail. Different structures of mathematical orders are impacting the noosphere. This is the structure of the triangular of 21, which equals 231. And then when we take the cubes of 1 to 21, they are 231 squared. 21 is the 8th value in the Fibonacci sequence. In the law of time, 21 is the value of the Hunapku and the basis of the 441 matrix, 21 squared. Even the Balinese calendar is a matrix of 21, or 21 times 10, or 7 times 30. This is the key number. Within the 441 cube matrix of 21 squared, there are various other coded matrices. Keep in mind that we are dealing with a fractal frequency chip that also conforms to a program latent in the corpus callosum. This program, the complement and extension of the 64 UR runes, is called the telepathic talking tree of life. It contains the keys of the code language of the second creation. Here we are dealing with the 6 octaves of the rune strands of the second creation. The rune strands account for 6 octaves, or 6 times 8 equals 48, notes or tones. This 6 octave range is the span of what the human ear can hear. The 6 octaves and the 48 runes, the octave keys of the second creation, occur in 3 sets. The first 2 octaves describe the actual second creation of the cosmic time-space. The first AC upper left octave is called the octave of the divine decree. This describes the formal creation of the time-space and the firmament, division of day and night, until the time-space establishes cosmos as the one universal mind. The second CA strand, lower right, takes the fiery element of creation metaphorically described as the cosmic creation realized as the tree of cosmic fire, representing the principle of active creation. The tree is the principle of the creation of life. The tree of fire is the principle of the tree that grows in the mind and conducts the creation process of the second creation. Here the cosmic tree of fire further defines the processes of day and night, and universal order in its process of planet mind, noosphere, and the star mind. The next 2 set of runes is the 2 center octaves. The upper one, AC, is the creation of life as galactic life whole, and the lower one, CA, is the creation of art as galactic art whole. So we have the creation of the cosmos and then the principle of how the cosmos creates the internal aspects of itself. This involves the creation of life as the galactic life whole, the galaxy being the unit that contains all possible permutations of the order of existence that we call life. From this galactic process comes the secondary stage where life creates art. So we have 1. The creation of cosmos. 2. Cosmos creates consciousness. 3. Consciousness creates galactic life. And 4. Life creates galaxy as art, including the expansion of cosmic consciousness into the universal creation domain. The 8 runes of the galactic life whole create or define the possibility of cosmic consciousness, which in turn creates the possibility of the galactic art whole. The 8 UR runes of the galactic art whole then define feedback units of the universe, creating the universe as an art form. When we talk about creating the planet as a work of art, we are actually talking about evolving a reflection of the galactic art whole that enters our system, attuning us to the galaxy as the medium of cosmic life expansion and evolution. The 5th rune strand, lower left, is the union of ascent and descent. This refers to the higher tantric principle of masculine and feminine operating as a unified force, the tendency of spirit, feminine, to descend, and of matter, masculine, to evolve. This is another way to look at it. The mind creates its opening to the channel of higher or hierarchical command. In opening to the higher command, the mind receives systematic orders of organization. This process of channeling becomes the way we restructure the very nature of reality and how we create cosmic order. The art whole shows us how to shape cosmic reality, but the union of ascent and descent takes us into the heart of the creation of cosmic order, the commands and the ordinances. In this way, we are cosmic scientists operating in a vast universal telepathic field. The 6th and final rune strand, upper right, is the infinite mind wave. This is the higher telepathic galactic Dzogchen, where we rest in the infinite mind wave and learn to create time through this mind wave. In the final stage, we realize the infinite mind wave evolving infinitely. These 6 octaves build on the 64 UR runes that have already been established. The 64 UR runes reflect the evolvement of the life codes, understood as the 64 codons of the DNA, up to the highest stages of the biological or physical evolutionary process. This includes its possibility to evolve into the noosphere and evolve into a perception of the galactic order. The 48 rune keys and 6 octaves of the second creation build on the 64 UR runes to describe how we become co-creators of our evolutionary process. The UR rune tones are keys of attunement to those processes of creation. The second aspect that holds the 441 telepathic infrastructure together is the hyperparton of the 6 plus 1 units that coordinate the form structure of the 6 octaves. The Dum Kuali, the hyperelectrical thermic force, is the primal heat, and the Dum Duar, the hyperelectrical luminic force, is the primal light. These two partons are balanced by the secondary forces of the heat of inner light, Kum, and the light of inner heat, Kemio. They create 4 parton force fields that connect the octaves. The generator of the galactic lifeforms, UR Rune 81, is the hyperneutron. The generator of the galactic art hole is UR Rune 90, the generator of the hyperelectron. The parton structure holds the 2 sets of octaves together. Where does this structure exist? It exists in a telepathic mental layer which is meant to be embedded into the corpus callosum of the brain, and this then becomes the core of the 7th mental sphere. At the very center of the hyperparticle holding the telepathic structure all together, we encounter the Sirius 52b hyperplasma, or element 113. This is an etheric transgalactic psychoelectric quantum particle that is a telepathically unifying element. Its origin is Sirius B. In addition to the 64 UR runes located in the upper part of the corpus callosum, there are 6 octave strands of the second creation with 48 runes. 48 plus 64 equals 112 UR runes. The center hyperplasma holds the 113th element. Element 113 also corresponds to the center unit of the 441 matrix. These 6 harmonic rune strands line either side of the axis of the corpus callosum. This is the core channel of the 441 time-space cube matrix, the basis of the new telepathic form language that is imprinting the noosphere. This creates the radial force field which will allow the mind and brain, as it evolves in the telepathic civilization, to become radialized, resulting in radial perception. Right now it seems we cannot see behind us, but with a fully developed holomind perceiver, we will have genuinely panoramic vision and wrap around sense field. See Cosmic History Chronicles Volume 2, page 185, and Cosmic History Chronicles Volume 3, page 120. This telepathic element 113 creates hypersensitivity in the brain, radializing and equalizing perceptual functions. This is what creates radial experiences. This possibility already exists in certain biological forms such as the starfish, which is a radiolarian with purely radial structures. In these biological types, their forms of perception are inherently radial. The evolutionary line that developed up to the human became bilateral. For this reason, the human perceptual field is bilateral, organized by right and left, back and front, top and bottom. These 6 primary orientations establish the 6 sides of the cube. Once we have become cubed, then we may become radialized on our path to perfection. As we enter telepathic civilization, we will experience a perceptual shift into a hyper-radial state. That is, we will unify all 3 binary orientations. In the final stages of biological evolution, our whole neuroanatomy will become increasingly radialized. Once perceptions are radialized, then we can reform the rest of the biological apparatus. This is the function of the Sirius B element. In addition, There are 4 hyperplasmic flows: the alpha-alpha flow, the alpha-beta flow, the beta-beta flow, and the beta-alpha flow, which each have 2 components, the activating and the sublimating. The activating component externalizes and the sublimating component internalizes. There are 8 component possibilities of terminals and generators, accommodating the activating and sublimating pairs. The whole of this structure consists of 65 units. Just as the 64 units of the DNA code, there are 48 octave runes plus 16 outer units, generators and terminals. There are 64 units like the DNA code. The 65th unit at the center is Cyrus B, the hyperradial plasma coordinating unit. This is a 65-unit structure that forms the core of the 441 matrix. The 441 matrix is the mathematical array which is the channel of the noosphere. Every one of these 65 units is coordinated with a number frequency from the 441 matrix. With these numbers, we can determine where each UR rune fits into the 441 matrix. In the matrix, the number 441 occurs at V11 and H11 and is loaded into the noosphere. Because the 441 matrices are loaded into a particular instrument or agent of transmission, they are then available as structural information units, conforming to different dimensions and permutations within the larger telepathic order. In the following subchapter, there is an example of telepathic language and grammar in the 441 rune triplet. The example is of 2 rune triplet sequences: 144, 414, 441, and 117, 171, and 711. There are 2 main points to consider in the examples of recombinant frequencies. 1. Number combination forms a type of grammar that triggers telepathic recognition. And 2. All numbers connect with each other to form a larger recombinant matrix of possibilities queued to the numbers 4, 7, 11, 13, 27, and 37. These numbers have aspects that refer both to the 441 matrix and to the reciprocal of 7. We see a deeper structure of meaning coded into the cube and the 1320 formulations. Through these 2 rune triplets, we discover a basis of understanding 7 and the reciprocal of 7. For instance, when 142,857 is reduced to its base matrix unit, it is 414, the middle unit of the 144, 414, 441 triplet. This is an example of the telepathic form language that exists in different mathematical whole number formulas. Because of the structure and meaning of 441, we can begin to see how it establishes a particular working system. We look forward to telepathic civilization. 441 is a set of integers with 3 recombinant possibilities: 144, 414, 441. The difference between 441 minus 414 is 27, or 3 cubed. The difference between 414 and 144 is 270, 27 times 10. The difference between 144 and 441 is 27 plus 270, which is 297, or 11 times 27. This means that there are 3 recombinant frequencies, all based on an interval difference of 27. Also, if we add 1 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 1 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 1, the sum is 27. This is one rune triplet. The other frequency triplet example is 117, 9 times 13, which also has 3 possibilities: 117, 9 times 13, 171, 9 times 19, 711, 9 times 75. The difference between 117 and 171 is 54, 27 times 2. The difference between 171 and 711 is 540, 27 times 20. And the difference between 117 and 711 is 594, 27 times 22. These are two base frequency triplet keys. We get a charge out of this because we are dealing with telepathic information. The fundamental formula is 4:7 what 7:13. 4 plus 7 equals 11. Then, 11 times 13 equals 143. If we multiply 999 times 143, we get 142,857. This number is a pure cyclic sequence, the reciprocal of 7. If we divide 1 by 7, we get a fraction whose whole number equivalent is 142,857, or 13 times 11 times 999. As we saw in Chapter 3, the reciprocal of 7 is a cyclic number. Any number from 1 to 6 multiplied by 142,857 yields a number that is the same digits in a different order but always in sequence. When we get to the factor of 6, 857, 142, we see it is a perfect reverse of the two triplet sets of 142, 857. When we get to 7 times the reciprocal, we get 6 nines. 6 nines divided by 999 is 1001, 143 times 7. This is a pure cyclic sequence that encodes the power of 7, which is the base of the 441. Note, 999 and 1001 are reciprocals of each other.